Welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be Elie Deglaoui and Bruce Veliz. Together, we're going to be breaking down a very active trade deadline. A lot of moves happened, so there's a lot to get into. Real quick, before the show starts, I just want to give a shout out to my boy J. Cole. Dropped the album of the year already. I don't care what else comes out. That's the album of the year. Another incredible album for my guy J. Cole. Um, had to get that out of the way. Another thing that I have to get out of the way, we didn't talk about the Super Bowl at all. Obviously, it's a basketball show, but the Seahawks are winning that shit. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just get into the episode and my conversation with Elie and Bruce about a very exciting trade deadline. All right, joining the show now is Elie Deglaoui and Bruce Velez to discuss a very busy NBA trade deadline. How you boys doing today?
All right, man. Appreciate you having us on again.
Yeah, I'm doing great. And like you mentioned, a fun NBA trade deadline where we're definitely going to have some fun laughs, but also definitely get on some rants about some bad teams. So it's going to be a great episode, I think.
Absolutely. I think we should start things off just by talking about what I think was the most surprising move of the deadline. I'm sure you guys would agree with this, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Utah Jazz. Just about as surprised as I can remember for any trade outside of the Luka trade. So as for the full details, is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Utah Jazz along with John Conchar and Vince Williams, as well as Jock Landale, who was waived and picked up by the Hawks. And then the Grizzlies got back Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, Georges Niang, and three first round picks. The first round picks don't belong to the Jazz though. It's from the Suns, Lakers, and Cavs. So yeah, overall, what did you guys think of this move, and how do you envision JJJ's fit with this Jazz team?
I like it. I like it. I like. I. It's a lot to more so the draft capital is a lot to give up, and I actually talked about I think the last time we were on the podcast. I'm not the biggest Jaren Jackson Jr. fan. I will say this: I like it if they retain Walker Kessler, because if Kessler's gone, I don't like it as much. Because one of the whole things with Jaren Jackson Jr. is he's good. I like him a lot. Uh, I just think he's not he can't be your best player, or I think even your second best player. But pairing him with a legitimate paint presence in Walker Kessler, and then having Lowry Markkinen play small forward, which he's done before, I think that's a super intriguing front court. It might not be the most conventional, but I actually could see it work. So I like it. And more importantly, that means Jaren Jackson Jr. didn't go to another team in the West for Utah's sake. So I think I like it.
Yeah, I have to give props to Shams here. This is the one time I'll give props to Shams because this was like an old Woj bomb, right? Like we saw this, like you mentioned, him, out of nowhere. But instead, this whole entire week, he just was like Giannis, 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 and nothing happened. So props to Shams for actually doing this all justice, but he needs competition or else it's going to be very, very bad because he's just not doing great. And that's my little tidbit on Shams there. But next to dive into the trade with Jaren Jackson, like Elie mentioned, I do like this for the Jazz. I think it's kind of like a buy low swing for them, especially in this Western Conference where the ownership has wanted to win over these last couple of seasons. I think this is the last year that they'll kind of imbue the tank, but now they're going to be running this jumbo lineup if they are able to retain Walker Kessler, which the team's motivated to do with him, Jaren Jackson, and Lauri Markkinen. And Lauri Markkinen had some success playing the power forward over in Cleveland. That's where he had a really good season before he was moved for Donovan Mitchell and ended up in Utah. So I do think that it will be kind of fun to have that, especially with Keontae George, who's had a really good season, and even Ace Bailey into the lineup with that jumbo lineup. The one kind of weird thing with them is not a lot of passing and playmaking, and not a lot of great defense, especially at the point of attack. So I do think for the Utah Jazz, kind of investing in maybe some of those defensive players here for the free agency, or maybe looking to use some of your other contracts to get some of those guys, could be a little bit of a move in that direction for the Jazz to make. But overall, taking a big swing on Jaren Jackson Jackson, I think, is a good move for them, especially because, like Elie mentioned, he's really good defensively but can't really rebound. So if you do have a guy like Walker Kessler who can grab those rebounds and be that rim presence alongside of him, I think it's a great fit. And then for Memphis, I mean, they're taking a bunch of young guys, which is very, very nice, and finally accepting their rebuild after trading Desmond Bane, something that I think they should have done. But my one big question mark is why do this trade if you weren't going to trade Ja Morant? Because they were rumored that they wanted to trade Ja Morant and were going to take a less value package, but then were not going to do that and held on to him this season, which I think is a little bit of a waste, especially because they didn't need to necessarily trade Jaren Jackson. Like, they could have kept him too. So I think that for the Memphis Grizzlies, I would have liked to see all of these pieces moved for them to finally decide with this rebuild. But I do think that it is a little bit of a smart move to sell on the highest value of Jaren Jackson, specifically when his contract hasn't hit that $50 million threshold this year, because he's still making $30 million. Next year, when that full extension kicks in, it might be a little bit of a worse of a contract. It would be a harder one for them to get off of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for the Jazz, it's like, why the hell not? You guys have been rebuilding for so long. And we'll talk about it a little bit with the Wizards, but I just like these like bottom of the standings teams just kind of saying, hey, we're done tanking. We're actually trying to get a competitive move in here. And I like what they gave up, honestly. I mean, obviously, like Clayton and Hendricks have some upside as young guys. I'm pretty high on both of them. But then, like the 3 first-round picks, that's valuable for Memphis. I think that's solid, but it's huge not to give up any of your own picks. I think it's sort of, I heard this on the Numbers on the Board podcast. They were saying it's like a new model of team building where you acquire a bunch of teams' first-round picks and then you flip them for assets on other teams that are on the move. And I think that's a really smart idea for this Jazz team. In terms of the fit with Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler, it's super intriguing to me. I think like the space in between, especially Lauri, but as well as JJJ, it's definitely there, and positional size is awesome. Like you guys were talking about, the rebounding factor, getting both of them really with Kessler is going to be huge, but at the same time, I am a little bit dubious of like the defense. Jaren Jackson and Kessler are awesome defenders, but who's going to guard like opposing threes is kind of my question. How are you going to be able to work that? Because Markkanen isn't like necessarily a guy you want to throw on like opposing threes, but at the same time, I think it's a worthy upside swing. And I could certainly see this Jazz team in the playoffs next year, which even to like, despite showing some positive signs this season, I never would have expected to be saying this after the deadline, and I never expected them to make a move like this. If anything, I thought they were going to go in the opposite direction. But yeah, I really like this Jazz team taking an upside swing, and I'm happy that they're going to be finally done tanking. As for the Grizzlies, I do think it was time to like kickstart a full rebuild, especially after trading Bane. Yeah, they probably should have moved off Ja, but at the same time, I get it because trading your 3 best players within the course of like 6 to 8 months is kind of difficult when you're a small market team and the value is just not there at all for Ja. Who knows if it will be in the summer, but I get kind of hanging on to him at this point because you were probably going to get like a Trae Young return or even something worse at this stage, especially because he's injured. But yeah, I'm excited for this new era of both teams, really. But I talked about it for the Jazz, but for the Grizzlies, like being able to potentially get one of these top 3 or 4 prospects in the draft is super intriguing. And I do like Cedric Howard. I really like some of the young pieces they got back. Zach Edey's intriguing. So they just kind of have a lot to like in terms of their young core, and then just loaded with draft capital. So interested to see how they go moving forward. All right, I think we can move on to the other big surprise, and especially because it is a little bit of a similar trade, not necessarily value wise, but in terms of a young team taking a swing at a big name, and that's the Wizards going out and getting Anthony Davis after trading for Trae Young a few weeks ago. Another move that I don't think anybody saw coming. So to recap the trade, it was Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell, as well as Jalen Hardy and Dante Exum for Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Marvin Bagley, 2 first-round picks. One is from Golden State, top 20 protected, and one is from Oklahoma City, as well as 3 second-round picks. So yeah, what did you guys make of this trade for both teams?
Um, I mean, from Dallas's side, I think we all knew they had to trade Anthony Davis. It's not super fair to him, but I mean, I'm not a Mavericks fan, so I don't know, but I feel like Anthony Davis was never going to be welcomed in Dallas. Like, he was always just going to be looked at as the guy we got for Luka Doncic, a trade that never should have happened. And I think he's always going to be synonymous with the Nico Harrison era. or error. So I think from Dallas's side, they had to trade Anthony Davis, completely just build around Cooper Flag, and I think this was the way to do it. And I think this was the time to do it. And then from Washington's perspective, I mean, Anthony Davis can still play. His biggest concern, obviously, is his health. But when he is healthy, he makes a huge impact. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty intrigued by the idea of Anthony Davis and Trae Young on the same team, and Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr in the same front court. Like I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't a little bit interested in that. I think this could be a win-win for both teams. Obviously, it's overall a pretty risky move to acquire a guy like Anthony Davis, but his value has never been and probably never will be lower than it is now. So um, I think it's probably worth it for them to take a shot and try to compete in what's going to be a wide open Eastern Conference even next season.
Yeah, I have to agree with Elie there. I think it was finally time for the Mavericks to move off of him. And I think that they should have made this move in the offseason once they had gotten Cooper Flag, once they had landed in the lottery, got number one. I think that's maybe when they should have traded him because his value would have been maybe not as high as maybe people thought of, or as much as what they could have gotten for Luka Doncic, obviously, but it would have been higher than what they got now, obviously with him dealing with his injuries and stuff like that throughout this season, and having the uncertainty of him obviously wanting that extension. And like you mentioned, Eamon, I like these young teams kind of buying low on these kind of guys, and we saw the Wizards do this just a couple off seasons ago when they traded obviously for Jordan Poole for the Chris Paul contract, and then they traded Jordan Poole for CJ McCollum, and they flipped CJ McCollum for Trae Young. They also invertedly turned Kyle Kuzma into Chris Middleton, and then Chris Middleton into Anthony Davis. So even if they don't keep these guys long term, I still think it raises their floor, which the Washington Wizards definitely need. Similar like the Jazz, kind of get some winning culture in there. And I think the major takeaway for this is not to judge this trade is once they decide to do their extensions, or if they decide not to do their extensions. I think that's kind of a bigger question here because Trae Young is obviously has the player option but is looking for an extension this offseason, and then Anthony Davis is going to be looking for another extension after his 2-year contract is up. So I think if the Wizards give them, the max extensions they want and lock them up long term, maybe it's not that great of a move because then you're kind of handicapping yourself. But I do think that if they play this kind of out and maybe even keep one of them for their future or keep both on some low value contracts, $30-40 million, or even if they do what they did with like Jordan Poole and stuff like that and flip them for other deals to continue this kind of rebuild, I think that's smart for the Washington Wizards as well. So they basically gave up nothing. Like those first round picks are top 20 protected from Golden State in 2030. Like that's nothing. The OKC picks, the 30th pick this year, they didn't have to give up much to get someone to raise their floor in Washington, which they definitely need, and I like that with Anthony Davis. And I think the funny meme that I saw on Twitter was, who's going to tell Alexander Starr, Anthony Davis that they're going to play the real power forward because they're both going to want to play power forward for this team, and I thought that was pretty funny. But Anthony Davis truly being that defensive center and Starr being that kind of offensive power forward, I think will be really fun for the Wizards. So overall, I really like it for the Wizards, and for the Mavericks, like Elie said, they needed to move off of him. I think that they should have moved off of him already, so just kind of ripping that Band-Aid off and now getting into the Cooper Flag stuff. And even though it's hard to forget about the Luka Doncic past just because it was only 2 seasons ago, I think it's finally time for the Mavericks to move off and kind of get into the sunset with Cooper Flag and their new possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. Starting with the Wizard side of things, I love it. Especially for the price. Like you're saying, Bruce, it's kind of crazy what they started with, and now they have all of a sudden Trae Young and Anthony Davis. That's crazy. To me, the Wizards could be like a sneaky play-in team next year. I don't think they're gonna be like close to championship contender to be clear, but I think this is like a very solid playoff team, especially in the Eastern Conference. And I already really liked their young core between Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson. There was just a lot of guys I liked, and I feel like originally adding Trey elevates all of them, and then Davis does, especially defensively. Who knows how healthy he'll be, but even if you get like 50 games out of Davis, I think this could be like a really solid playoff team. And I just, again, similar to the Jazz, I just love these rebuilding teams just saying, hey, we're done tanking. We're done trying to win 15 games every year. Let's just actually try to build something, and let's try to get our young guys some real reps in the playoffs. And I think that could be huge. And then who knows, the Wizards are probably still going to tank this year, and they could get another top pick to throw into this equation. And I think that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, overall, I just really like what the Wizards are building. I do agree that we'll have to see how these extensions play out with Trae and Davis. I can't imagine them getting like lucrative deals. Obviously like above like 30 million ish, but like into the 40s, I don't personally see it. And I think overall this like front office is super smart, so I don't think they're gonna like try to break the bank for them. But yeah, for the price they gave up, not just to get Davis, but to get Trae Young, I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer, and I just love how both of those guys fit with this team. So yeah, overall I love it for the Wizards. On the Mavericks side of things, I think I'm a little bit lower than you guys. Like I get it, and maybe like it was just so bad with the fan base because they traded away Luka to get Davis that just had to be done. So I totally get that, and I get like moving on to Cooper's timeline a bit, but at the same time, like when you see this value back, it's like so underwhelming, and I do wonder a little bit like maybe they do this in the off season and they get a little bit more because teams get desperate after losing out in the playoffs, and then Davis's contract is expiring. Um, Regardless, I don't think they would have gotten like a haul to be clear. Yeah, but at the same time, I might have just held on to Davis, especially next year. You don't own your first round pick, so there is some incentive to like try to be competitive after like this season where you're probably trying to tank and get another top pick to pair with Cooper. So I would have probably held on to Davis. I feel like that's been like my hot take since they fired Nico Harrison, that where it's like, yeah, like this situation isn't great, but like I would just kind of play it out with Davis because I do think there's some real value to like having a competitive team around Cooper next year. And I just don't see the Mavericks being able to do that with this trade. And maybe I'm wrong because they did get that expiring money with Chris Middleton, and that could be helpful. But I don't know. I don't love it as much for the Mavericks. I think it's just kind of a underwhelming return, and I feel like this was always going to be kind of the baseline return for Davis. So yeah, I would have just held on to him. That's a little bit of my hot take. I feel like most people would agree with you guys that the Mavericks should have just traded him, and I do get like from a fan base perspective how pissed the fan base was, rightfully so. At or not, they shouldn't have like taken it out on Davis, but like frustrated with the situation because they traded Luka and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I kind of get it for both sides, but I just like it a lot more for the Wizards and don't like it as much as many people do for the Mavs. But yeah, we can move ahead and talk about another trade that was a bit of a surprise, but there was like some weird smoke leading up to it for like 24 hours. But when the first reports came out that the Clippers and Cavs were discussing a swap of James Harden and Darius Garland, at least me personally, I was very surprised by that. So ultimately, it ended up being Harden for Garland and a second round pick. So yeah, what did you guys make of this trade?
I still don't know. Like I this is one of those trades that okay. I think this trade is safer for the Clippers because obviously Garland is much younger and he can be their point guard essentially moving forward. And James Harden, I believe, only has one more year on his contract after this one, I believe. So he probably wasn't going to be long for LA anyway. I think from the Clippers' perspective, it's fine. From Cleveland's perspective, I mean, there have been rumors for so long that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland didn't really get along. I still remember, I think 2 seasons ago, there was that report that I think Donovan Mitchell was going to be like, hey, it's either him or me. We can't both be on this team together. I don't know if James Harden's going to fix that. But I will say, I think this at least raises the ceiling for Cleveland because if we're getting James Harden, who can still play. I mean, he's not the same MVP caliber guy, but he's definitely still a valuable asset. But if he can kind of get back to that form in any type of way, I mean, this could be huge for Cleveland. It looks like they're finally working their way up the standings, and it seems like they're finally figuring things out. And adding a guy like James Harden, who can take a lot of the pressure off Donovan Mitchell in a way that Darius Garland couldn't, could really, really help them. But I think we all already know about playoff James Harden. He'll get you to a game seven. He won't win you a game seven. And so uh, that's where the risk comes in. Uh, I think I like it. I mean, obviously, we don't know what went on behind the scenes. I feel like that would make it a lot easier for me to have a more concrete opinion on it. But just based on what we know, I like the trade for the Clippers. I'm either going to love it or hate it for the Cavaliers. Just ask me again in a few months.
I just love how James Harden never fails to disappoint us with the trade deadline every single year. It feels like this is his fourth trade request now, and it is just absolutely insane that he can still get away with this. And I think that the Clippers really lucked out for the fact that he demanded a trade and they still lucked out with a guy in Darius Garland, because even though he has those injuries from this year, and even though, like Elie mentioned, the Cavs started getting hot with him kind of going out with those injuries and picking up that run streak where I think they thought they could kind of make this move where they didn't need Darius Garland with their team anymore. I do think that it is a big of a risk for the Clippers here, because you're going in with Darius Garland now, going in as your young guard. They obviously, I won't spoil it, but they made another trade as well, so they are kind of resetting their team a little bit here for the future. And I know that the Clippers were trying to aim to like have money for 2027 free agency. I don't know necessarily if that's the plan, because they now have guys like Garland and someone else who are probably going to be taking up that money. But if they want to compete in the West in a couple of years against like Shea still, Wemby still, who knows if the Rockets are still going to be good. I feel like the Nuggets might fall off a little bit, but you got young teams like the Jazz rising up, and maybe even the Suns, Timberwolves, other teams. Like, I don't necessarily know where the Clippers really stand with like a Darius Garland and other player type of led team, but I do think that it is a very interesting kind of way for them to go, specifically with James Harden requesting a trade. I feel like they kind of had no really pivot move, so being able to get Darius Garland was very, very rewarding for them. And I do think him kind of having, if the Clippers are going to tank, having this season to kind of get healthy and get back to the full strength of things instead of having the Cavs trying to rush him back so he can be ready for the playoffs, for a deep playoff run, is going to be better for his career and for his health as well, which I would really like for Garland, because I do think he can still be that type of player that we saw just a couple years ago, where he's been an all-star before, he's been healthy in his career. It's just been a little bit rough this past like season and a half. And then for the Cavs, obviously they upgrade with Harden, who obviously won an extension with the Clippers. Clippers weren't willing to give him that, so we'll have to wait and see if the Cavs end up giving him that money and what that money does look like, because the Cavs obviously made other moves to kind of help free up their salary situation for next season. Hint, hint, wink, wink, LeBron James when he's a free agent. So I don't necessarily know what this Cavs team is going to look like, if James Harden will be here because they want to make Donovan Mitchell happy, but maybe that is the icing on the cake, is getting LeBron and re-signing James Harden and having that type of team in Cleveland. But I do think overall the Cavs do win from this trade, because they're adding a top 5 point guard in the league when healthy and at his prime, and this season has been playing like that in James Harden, alongside a guy in Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley to help them rise in a weakened Eastern Conference, which they were a little bit out of just like a month ago, but now seem to be back in that race, climbing up at like that 5th range, and I think can be a top 4 team in the East when it all fizzles out with Harden in this squad. So I like the move for them, and a lot of people critique the Harden doesn't pass. I saw that on Twitter, but him and Evan Mobley and him and Jared Allen is going to feast with the lobs down low, and I think that additional loan is going to help elevate the Cavs offense in ways that not a lot of people think are looking at.
Yeah, for sure. Guess I'll start with the Clippers. I really like this move for them, especially like you guys said, they were put in a tough position because Harden did his, famous, you know what, guys, I don't want to be here anymore, actually, for the 4th time in 6 years. But yeah, being able to get back a guy he is worse right now, but I wouldn't say like by a whole lot, quite frankly. I'm a big Darius Garland fan, so maybe that factors into it. But yeah, being able to get a guy who's like slightly worse than Harden and is 10 years younger, and you get a second round pick. If any picks were involved, I thought they would be attaching a pick to Harden, quite frankly. I think that's a massive win, especially for a Clippers team that really just does need some sort of youth. And I get like the cap space stuff isn't great because they were trying to make a big move in 2027, but more often than not, I feel like we've seen like quiet free agencies. So I do personally like just having like more stability going forward, especially with like Garland, and it's the oldest roster in the league. Like they just needed some youth. So I think that's huge, and I think a lot of people are kind of underrating Darius Garland from what I've seen. Like a lot of people are saying, oh, the injury concerns, and yes, he has dealt with this like weird toe injury, and that's something to note. But he's not like a John Morant type of guy who hasn't been healthy throughout his career. He's just had like this one weird injury. But I mean, even going back to last year, he played 75 games. I just wouldn't consider him like an injury prone guy personally. And maybe there's more to like the medicals that I know about. And I'm going to sound like an idiot in a couple of years, but I feel pretty confident in Garland staying healthy and being like a multi-time all-star for this team. And I really like it. I really like the idea of like Garland and Kawhi too. I think that's a lot of fun. Losing Zubac does hurt a little bit because I did like the idea of that pairing, but we'll talk about that in a second. I did like that trade for them as well. Then on the Cavs side of things, This is a tough one because I talked about a lot. I think this core needed a shakeup ahead of the deadline, and maybe like the Mitchell Garland relationship was that bad. Like you were talking about Elie, I did hear rumors of that as well. So maybe that's like a real possibility. I also think it's funny. Like saw Rich Paul say to Darius Garland that this is going to be your last season in Cleveland. I thought that was a little funny, but yeah, I think this core needed a shakeup. And ultimately, I don't know if there was a move that was gonna get them to their like championship aspirations. Uh, and this move to me just doesn't get them there. I do think it definitely raises their floor, especially in the regular season. I think they're gonna move up the standings. I could see them going into that top four range at least, maybe even like top three, which was widely expected of them before the season starts. I feel good about this team in the regular season. In the playoffs, I don't. I'm sorry. I just don't trust James Harden. I mean, this team could win. They could literally win out the regular season, and I wouldn't pick them to come out of the East. I just don't trust James Harden in the playoffs. At this point in his career, and he's 36. So I don't love that aspect, but I do like the idea of like getting a little bit more size in that backcourt because I feel like a backcourt of two guards that was 6'2" and under was always not the best recipe, especially paired with the non-shooting big men. I talked about that a lot leading up to the trade deadline. I would always find a way to like sneaky mention, hey, maybe the Cavs should trade Jared Allen or Darius Garland. And obviously they end up moving Garland. And I also just don't like the idea of like this team shrinking their window a lot. And maybe there is some pressure with like Mitchell potentially leaving, but I don't know. I feel like this team, especially, you have like Mobley, who's super young. You had Garland, who is super young. Mitchell isn't like a young player by any means, but he's not like an old player. But like the idea of like shrinking your window with Harden, I don't personally love a ton. And then if you're bringing in LeBron James next summer, which at this point I would kind of bet on, I don't know. They're talking about like this team has a 2-3 year window. I don't know. I don't really love it. Obviously, this season's been a big disappointment, so they did need to shake things up. But in general, I just don't love when teams like reduce their window by so much, and I think it could potentially backfire in the Cavs. But yeah, we can go ahead and talk about the Clippers' other trade, which is a very personal one for Elie as a Pacers writer. But yeah, we got a last minute move, like 10 minutes before the deadline or something like that. We got Ivica Zubac going to Indiana in exchange for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, two first round picks and a second round pick. Um, One of the first round picks is 2029, as well as a first round pick potentially this year, if it falls between 5 and 9, if I'm not mistaken on any of those details. But yeah, what did you guys make of this move for both sides?
All right. So for those who don't know, um, I'm a huge, huge Benedict Mathurin fan. Like I love Benedict Mathurin. Not only did I think the Pacers should have kept him at the trade deadline, I was adamant that they should re-sign him this upcoming offseason. And I thought they should have signed him to a new deal last summer. That was a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but that's just how high I am on him. And I know there are concerns about his fit in Indiana, or I guess were concerns about his fit in Indiana, and I think those were valid. He's a ball dominant wing in a system that relies on pushing the tempo and moving the ball around. Like I get all of that. I still feel like trading him is incredibly risky, and that was one of the reasons that I didn't think they should do it. I will say though, I did write, and I have a few articles out there that if the Pacers were to trade Benedict Mathurin this season, of all the realistic candidates, because like yeah, if Jokic is available, sure, make that happen. But of all the realistic ones, Zubats was the guy I thought they should have traded him for. He's not a floor spacer. He's not going to be like Miles Turner, but that's what actually really intrigues me about this. They're going to have just a paint presence, somebody who can score in the paint but can also rebound, is also an incredible rim protector and can run the length of the court, and he's mobile. He is a little bit like a tiny bit of a passer and a playmaker, especially for someone his size. And I'm excited about the idea of him with Tyrese Halliburton. I also want to throw out that I love that not only was Jarris Walker not in this trade, but Isaiah Jackson was. So I like Isaiah Jackson. He's super athletic, and he honestly he didn't miss a step despite having an Achilles injury and being off of a year off of that. he still looked athletic and explosive, and he still looked good, but he didn't take advantage of being the opening night starting center. He's getting paid $7 million a year. Jay Huff is a better fit in their system than he is, and you can't keep him around as your third string center if he's getting paid $7 million a year. So for them to be able to get off his contract in the deal, I thought was great too. And then I know a lot of people are going to talk about the 2026 pick. It is 1 through 4 protected, and then 5 through 9 goes to LA, and then every other pick after that stays with Indiana, I believe. I think we all know if the pick falls between 5 and 9, it's not nearly going to be as valuable. That's usually the case, but especially in this draft class where there's a pretty clear top 4, and all 4 of those guys are guys you'd be happy about. I mean, no disrespect to Kingston Flemings, but if the Pacers fall to that, the 5th pick in the draft, like I don't think they're going to be very happy about that. At that point, if that's what it took to get Zubac, then let it be that. So it hurts that Mathurin's gone, but I think this is a good trade for Indiana.
Yeah, I like you, Elie. I'm a huge fan of Bennedict Mathurin. I got the jersey in my closet, and it's going to be heartbreaking for me to have to buy a Clippers jersey for him now because they just completely did my boy CP3 dirty, and now I have to go buy another jersey for their team to support my boy Mathurin. I will do it, but it will pain me to buy that jersey. But yeah, Mathurin, a great player, like you mentioned, but didn't really fit in with their system. That was kind of my thoughts and takeaways from it, with like the high up-tempo ball movement and with just like him coming off the bench really to be that kind of combo scorer to lead that bench unit was like his best for the team. I felt like he was a lot better than that. Like you mentioned, he could be kind of like that star level player. So I wanted to kind of see him get those tools. And I always thought that he could be like last season. I always thought he could be traded for Kawhi Leonard with the Clippers. I always thought that could have been like a cool move for the teams. But then obviously that didn't really go through to play. But he still ends up in LA, which I think will be fun now. Him and Darius Garland kind of, I don't know how that's going to work, but I think it will be just kind of fun to kind of invest into some young guys and buying low into them and seeing what they can pan out to be for their future as building blocks will be interesting, specifically for his Clippers team that should be kind of doing that, I do believe, in this Western Conference. And then you also, like you mentioned, Isaiah Jackson kind of getting moved as well, with them having Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker and even Jay Huff there, and bringing in Zubac. There just wasn't really a hole for him to really shine, so I do think moving off of him was great. And then for the Pacers, they get Zubac, who you mentioned is going to be a fantastic rim presence, going to be someone that can hold on the defensive end. I think is going to be a better fit than Miles Turner, even if he can't run and play with them as fast, because you do have Jay Huff off the bench to be that offensive level threat from the 3-point and to be as your center. So I do really like that for the Pacers, and I think that next season, like with Tyrese Halliburton coming back, if they're the medical team. They know they're the smarts. So if they know he's going to come back fully 100% and be okay after this injury, adding Zubac, adding Pascal Siakam, and potentially adding a top 4 pick, or even if not adding a top 4 pick, I still think they can be front runners in this Eastern Conference and be a powerful workhorse in that regard. So I think they made the smart move to kind of go all in with Tyrese. So I like this for them.
Yeah, most definitely. I love this move for the Pacers. I think Zubac is a perfect fit with this team, and like you said, Elie, I'm really interested to see like this different element that they didn't have with Miles Turner. Like the floor spacing's awesome, but me personally, I kind of like what Zubac brings a little bit more. Just like that bruiser inside. Much better rim protector than Miles Turner, despite like Turner having this reputation as a rim protector. It's just not really. And then like the rebounding, I feel like that's something they did lack, despite being literally 1 game away from winning the finals last year. So I think it's just like a perfect fit. And yeah, super interested to see. I'll go this out in a second, but like I could potentially see the Pacers as of now. Obviously, a lot can change before next season, but like entering the year for me as like favorites to win the East again. I could very much see that, and I wouldn't have said that before this move with their center situation, obviously. In terms of like what they gave up, I definitely agree with you guys about like the draft pick stuff. Like, yeah, like I'm not gonna lie, I was very surprised that they did give up like anything in the 26 draft, just given how bad they've been. But the protection stuff is definitely huge, and I mean, like you guys said, like the top 4 is really like the prized possessions of this draft class, but also at the same time, I do like the depth of this draft class, just not for this Pacers team specifically, because it's like loaded with guards, and if they're drafting someone, unless it's like a Darren Peterson, where it's like, okay, we can't pass up on Peterson, he's just that good. I would look to get a forward or a big man, And ultimately, like outside of that top four, there's just not a ton there. Some nice guys that could go in like the late lottery that I like, but like at like pick seven, for instance, or whatever, I don't see it totally. Like I love like Kinston Flemings and Keaton Wagler, all those guys, but for this Pacers team, they don't really need another guard. So I don't mind moving that pick at all, especially when you're getting a player as good as Zubac. So um, I really like it. And then for the Clippers, taking a swing at Ben Mathurin is a lot of fun to me. And like I said with Garland, they just needed some youth badly. And then you're able to get two first round picks, one that could potentially be a lottery pick back. For Zubac, I think that's great value for a team that's just deprived of all draft picks. So I hate to say it because I don't like this Clippers organization, but I really like what they did at the deadline. I think they put themselves in a better position. So to me, this trade's a true win-win, and this was something we kind of talked about before the deadline about this potential swap, and it's kind of fun to see that it happened, and I think it's going to work out nicely for both teams.
Yeah, and I'm just happy that the Clippers did their best and freed our boy CP3. That they at least did us justice.
They tried. They
How
tried.
how I feel like of all the trades that have happened so far, or so far, of all the trades that have happened this year, this one I think has the best potential to be a win-win. In my like this one could be like super beneficial for both teams. And how crazy is it that basically over the course of 2 or 3 days, the Clippers went from being this ancient old team to actually having a lot of potential now. It's kind of crazy to think about.
It is, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna watch a lot more Clippers games. Me personally, I'm not trying to like slander the guy. I just don't like watching James Harden that much, quite frankly. I like Garland a lot more. And Zubac was fun with that team and whatever, but like I want to see Ben Mathurin in this new situation, so I'm gonna be tuned into a lot more Clippers games. Two questions. I don't know why, like I haven't been doing this for every trade or whatever, it just hasn't popped into my head, but like two questions I have about like both these teams. For the Pacers, like I mentioned, like do you guys think this potentially makes them the early favorites next year? And then for the Clippers, like are you guys surprised at all just because of everything that happened that we didn't get a Kawhi trade?
Well, for the Pacers, like this, I actually wrote about this. I don't mean to like self plug my own work, but I actually did write about how I felt like in a weird way the Pacers have a brighter future now than they did before Halliburton went down, because not only now do they have, I think, an upgrade at center, but they now know that this conference isn't, it's still not super strong even with them not being at full strength. Like they can still compete. And if they do land a top four pick in this year's draft, like if they pair uh Tyrese Halliburton with Darren Peterson, like that's disgusting. And they're still young. They have a great coaching staff, a great front office. Like I'm being dead serious, and maybe there's some bias here too, but I could wholeheartedly see Indiana and Boston being the top two teams in the East next season, because Detroit's good and they should be getting better, but I think both of those teams can overtake them. And then as for the Clippers, honestly, I guess a little bit. I mean, I feel like of all those guys, Kawhi's the hardest to trade because you don't really know what you're trading for. Again, kind of like Anthony Davis, he's great when he plays. He still has a lot left in the tank. I mean, this season has mostly been a good one for him, but we all know about his injury history. He's not getting any younger, so I think it's just, especially kind of in a hurry, it's pretty risky for any team to trade for him. But I think for the most part, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Kawhi trade in the offseason. But I guess I'm a little bit surprised that it didn't happen.
Yeah, for the Pacers, I would definitely agree with you guys. I think that they can be those title favorites coming out of the Eastern Conference next year. Like you mentioned, Ely, the East is just weak, and who knows what the Cavs are going to look like, right? Like we talked about, maybe they get LeBron James, but like, what if they don't? And what's their future look like? Like Detroit is obviously internally going to get better, but I still think they're like one more move away from hitting that peak, and they didn't want to make that move this deadline because they were doing good as a team. But do they make that move this offseason? Like that's a big question. And then obviously you have Boston as well. I don't think Toronto and Philly are going to be in those kind of conversations next year. Maybe even with Orlando getting a little bit better. So I would think that Indiana is definitely in those conversations, at least a top two or top three team in the Eastern Conference. And then to go to the Clippers point, I think if they had done the Zubac trade, like I know Jake Fisher talked about the trade the night prior to the deadline, so like it was like being discussed but didn't go through to like you mentioned like a couple minutes before the deadline had finished. I think that if the trade had gone through that night, similar to how the James Harden one had happened at like 7 o'clock the night previous, then maybe we could have seen some discussions with Kawhi because teams would have had more time to like get into the Clippers' ear. But I do think the fact that since Zubac happened so late and they didn't necessarily know that they were going to move off of him until they moved off of James Harden, I think kind of put the Clippers in a difficult situation. And I also think that Kawhi is very limited with his teams. I know that he's stated before like he wants to be in LA, he doesn't want to be anywhere else. So like, is Steve Ballmer really going to trade him to the Lakers? Like, no. Is he going to trade him to the Warriors for Jimmy Butler? No. Like, I didn't really see a trade really going through this deadline. But like Elie said, I think this offseason, with how the Clippers look, if they especially get that pick from the Pacers, like if they get a pick 5 through 9, say they get pick 6 or pick 7, and they also have their pick going to OKC in the lottery as well, like their own pick, I could see a deal kind of coming into play. Maybe not with Kawhi going to OKC specifically, but like a 3-team deal where maybe they try to get their pick back or try to get another pick or maybe even use the 5th pick to move up in the draft or something like that with Kawhi. It could be very fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought I'd throw those out there. I think I already kind of mentioned I like the Pacers at this point to come out the East next year. I mean, obviously luck can change. Still super high on the Pistons too. I do think they need another move though. And then yeah, the Clippers. Like I agree with you, Bruce. Like if this had happened a little bit before, I could have potentially seen a Kawhi move, but since it didn't, I guess it makes sense. And he is like the hardest of those guys to move. And I do feel like they have like some weird loyalty to him. Another thing I kind of heard like not rumored by any actual like insiders or anything, but like just people like speculating on Twitter and stuff. Like, is a Kawhi suspension like about to happen? That's what I'm kind of curious about. I know that Pablo Torre said we can't expect anything in the year of 2025. We're about midway through the season. All-Star break's happening, and the Clippers are hosting it. So I could kind of see something maybe in early March. Obviously not reporting anything. Just like sort of connecting the dots, and I do wonder if like Kawhi's gonna be suspended. Maybe that factored into the whole Harden thing. But yeah, I don't know. That's like pure speculation. Just thought it was like kind of worth noting.
Yeah, I saw some of that online too, so I wouldn't be shocked because if his contract did get voided or something like that, or just in any circumstance, it would be difficult for like the team to acquire him. So I feel like kind of waiting to see how that goes, regardless if he gets a suspension or if it gets swiftly swept under the rug. We'll have to wait and see.
I fully trust Adam Silver to sweep it under the rug. Yeah, I think it's worth before discussing some other trades. Quickly circling back to the Cavs because they did make like I guess the second real move of the deadline. I guess if you count like the Trae Young thing that happened in January, but they kind of kicked things off by trading DeAndre Hunter for Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder, and then I also think it's worth talking about the Sacramento Kings not making any other moves outside of this. But yeah, what did you guys sort of make of this deal for both sides?
So, for the Cavs, I really liked it. I think bringing in Keon Ellis is very, very fun. They needed some more on-ball pressure in their backcourt, and I think adding him is going to be pretty solid. And then adding Dennis Schroeder as well. I know that they got rid of Darius Garland, so that was a little bit of a question mark, like how would they work? But with Harden, Schroeder, Mitchell, and Keon Ellis, this is a very, very solid backcourt, and I think it's going to be very, very fun. And with Dennis Schroeder, we all know the meme of him being bad on one team and then being good on another team. Well, he was bad on the Kings, so he'll be good on the Cavs. So he's going to bounce back. He's going to look pretty solid and be that kind of Ty Jerome replacement for this team that they have desperately needed once again after losing him and having no really true backup point guard once rookie Rubio retired a couple years ago in the middle of the season. But I do like that for the Cavs, bringing in those two players. It's said that they want to extend Keon Ellis too, which is going to be very, very nice for them, kind of getting him there. And moving off DeAndre Hunter, the fake 3-and-D wing that everyone is always intrigued by, was a great move because he was making $25 million this year, $25 million next year. He wasn't really fitting in with your team, and I honestly think Jalen Tyson has surpassed him in their lineup and it surpassed him in that role this year. So I think that that was a smart move for them. And yeah, the Kings, the rant on the Kings. Here it comes. What are they doing? I don't know. Absolutely insanity. They could have gotten rid of Malik Monk for Jonathan Kuminga. The Warriors didn't want to buy it. Then they still keep Malik Monk. I guarantee he was going to get DMPs and not play. They could have gotten Chris Middleton for Sabonis in the Wizards trade for that we talked about with AD, but they didn't want to take on Middleton and they wanted more than Middleton. So they bowed out of that and got completely swept out. What are they doing there? Take the expiring contract and just wipe the books clean of Domantas Sabonis. Then they didn't want Jakob Poeltl's contract for Sabonis. Understandably so. He has bad back issues. But there are 2 TPEs created that are $27 million and $28 million in the NBA with the Celtics and the Grizzlies having them. I'm sure if you got them draft capital and you have draft capital, Sacramento, they would have taken on that contract. But no, they don't want to do that. I get keeping Zach LaVine because he isn't expiring next year. It makes sense for this team. Use that in the offseason. But DeMar DeRozan was arguably the one that could have been traded the most because he has a partially guaranteed contract at $10 million next year, and they still couldn't find a suitor to take that on. They still don't play Devin Carter, and he still is on the team. The one player that they traded arguably is the one player that they should have kept and should have been on this team in Keon Ellis that should have been given a qualifying offer in the offseason. But no, they said, we're going to let you go. We're going to make you an RFA. We're not going to sign you to a scam contract and get second round picks for you. Matter of fact, we're going to have to attach draft capital on you with the salary that we signed this offseason that everyone told us was a bad one, but we cleared money to sign to get off of in a salary dump. I do not understand what Vivek is doing. Scott Perry just has attachments to former players and doesn't make deals done. It is absolutely insanity. I get it. They're going to be a bottom 4 team. They're going to get a top pick. But do we really trust that any of those players is going to be able to develop in Sacramento this season? I don't think so. And if they go after Boozer or Caleb Wilson, well, guess what? Unfortunately, you have Keegan Murray, you have DeAndre Hunter, you have Sabonis there already. So what realistically pathway are you giving to lead to those guys? I don't necessarily know. It's just very, very confusing. I'm very, very frustrated with Sacramento. They're my biggest loser here, even worse of a loser than the Miami Heat, who made no moves, because the Sacramento Kings were expected to make so many of these moves, so many, and they only made one of them, and they got a worse contract and took more money salary. Sacramento is terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, what he said. I don't know how much more I can add to that, to be honest. I like Keon Ellis. He's going to be good in Cleveland. He gives them depth, all of that. I am excited to see where the Kings go from here, because I think we all kind of thought at least one of the big 4, whatever it is, would get traded at the deadline. And I understand they're all hard to trade, but I mean, we heard rumors that Toronto might have been interested in Domantas Sabonis, and then that didn't happen. And so I don't know what their game plan is moving forward, but I guess I'm just excited to see what they do, because something has to be done in the off season, and I guess I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of hard to follow up what Bruce said because he just nailed it with the Kins. But I would like to mention the sort of piggyback off Bruce's point, like, it is baffling that these 3 players are still all on the roster. If you don't trade all 3 of them, you trade one of them, that's fine. But this is like legit the worst organization in basketball by an immense margin. Maybe you could throw out the Pelicans or Bulls, but I think it's the Sacramento Kings for me. And it all, like you said, Bruce, it comes down to the owner. Vivek should sell the team for the love of God. And it really sucks because, like, the Kins a couple years ago, they had that crazy light the beam season, and then they haven't been able to return to the playoffs since, and they're just taking a total nosedive, and they're not moving off these guys despite already being like 14th in the West. It's like, what are you doing keeping them? Get some assets, just take what you can get. I'd be really, really, really frustrated if I was a Kins fan. I'm not even a Kins fan, and I already kind of am a little bit frustrated. But yeah, just a brutal deadline for them. This trade itself, whatever. I don't like it. I wouldn't say I like it. I'm not a big DeAndre Hunter guy. It's like you're sort of taking on money for no reason, and I don't think Hunter's shown anything this season. I get, like, hypothetically, him and Keegan Murray, that makes sense, but with Hunter, it's been hypothetical. I mean, he had a nice season last year, I'll give him that, but for most of his career, it's just been a hypothetical player, in my eyes, and not a huge fan. And Keon Ellis, I think he's gonna be awesome in Cleveland. I think he's like that prototypical 3-and-D win. But they didn't play him. Multiple coaches. I think Doug Christie is also just not an NBA head coach, with all due respect. So yeah, just a complete mess for the Kins. For the Cavs, I love the Keon Ellis pickup. I also like Schroeder, that like backup guard to fill in that like Ty Jerome role. So I thought that was a nice move for the Cavs. Even if I wasn't the biggest fan of their Harden trade, I thought this was a really solid move, and I like it a lot for them. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my boy Shep. I don't know if he's listening, but his favorite player of all time is Dennis Schroeder. So everyone has a fan. That's the moral of that story. Massive Dennis Schroeder fan. Um, I think we can move along.
Wait, what if, my bad, I just thought of something. What if the Kings signed Lonzo Ball
Oh my
to pair
god.
with Levine and DeRozan?
That's one of the few teams I can low key see for Lonzo too. I'm
That's
not
what I'm
even
saying.
kidding.
They have a chance to do the funniest thing.
Yeah,
I'm
and then
gonna
they can
keep an
go
eye.
get
He
Zach
brings him back to
Collins.
California. He goes back to California. I mean, don't say I didn't warn you if it happens.
I
I
didn't
don't
think
want
about that.
I don't want that notification popping up on my phone. Just tell Shams to send that one to everyone else besides me.
You know what? I hope we see it. You know what? Now that I said it, I hope it happens. I really, really, really do. I hope so. I'm rooting for it.
It'd be kind of funny. I don't totally hate that idea. Like they got some open minutes in the backcourt. Like I don't know. I don't think he's like a. I think a lot of people are like mocking him to like real contending teams. I'm like, oh, I'll totally see it with Lonzo at this point. I'm not gonna lie. But like a nice spot to maybe rejuvenate his career. Although it's like basketball hell, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can low key see that one. Um, I think we could talk about another trade that just, I mean, came out of left field here. And that would be the Jonathan Kuminga for Kristaps Porzingis trade. I don't think anyone had this one on their bingo card. Also included in the deal was Buddy Hield going to Atlanta. But what do you guys make of this one? It might be the weirdest trade of the deadline, to be honest. But yeah,
Yeah.
what do you guys make of it?
Yeah. I mean, I said this before. I feel like this is one of those trades that can go in any direction, and I wouldn't be surprised. Porzingis could return to form and ball out in Golden State, and then they look like geniuses, or it's just going to be the same unfortunate story it's been for the last year or so, where Porzingis just hasn't been him, and he can't stay on the court. Like he especially can't stay on the court now with Potts and whatever it is that he's going through. So this is a super. I don't want to say risky, but this is just a move that could really go in either direction for Golden State. And then that's what you get for Jonathan Kuminga, who, in theory, should have had an opportunity now to shine. Like you finally had the door burst wide open because of Jimmy Butler's injury, and then you trade him and you trade him for Porzingis, and then from Atlanta's perspective, I mean, I don't know. I know you guys were talking about it a little bit before, and you both like the Kaminga fit in Atlanta. I don't know how much I love it. I mean, I don't hate it, but I feel like the problem is we still don't know what Kaminga is. And funny enough, I actually like the Buddy Hield acquisition for them, which is kind of the part that's I think thrown under the rug, but I like it. I mean, he's incredibly streaky, but when he's on, he's on. And for a team that no longer has Trae Young, just for starters, I mean, that's and obviously no Luke Kennard anymore. That's a start. So, I mean, this could be a disaster. It could be a win-win. It could be a super win for one team and a loss for the other team. I feel like I'm leaning more towards I like this for Atlanta because in theory they didn't really risk a lot because who knows if Porzingis is ever really going to touch the court again on a regular basis. Uh, but it's definitely a hard one to make heads and tails of.
Yeah, I would say I like it a little bit more for Atlanta just because I feel like the Kristaps Porzingis experiment was for a Trae Young team. It wasn't really led for this kind of young style team. And I feel like this offseason they weren't going to re-sign him, and it was kind of clear that they weren't going to re-sign him. So with him being and expiring and kind of getting off that money, I know people were talking about Buddy Hield's contract, but he's only $3 million guaranteed next year, and Kuminga has the team option. So you're basically getting out of the contract, and you're just taking a flyer on Kuminga and Buddy Hield to see if they can stick with your team. And like Elie mentioned, I think him and the other player they got, Gabe Vincent, will be pretty solid for this shooting team with the losses of Trae Young and Vic Krejci to this roster. Adding those guys, and obviously who do they get for the Trae Young trade? Corey Kispert, excuse me. I think having him on the wing as well would be very solid for them. So adding that shooting, I think, is very, very good. And once again, taking the flyer on Jonathan Kuminga, I think, is worth it, especially if you only had to give up Kristaps Porzingis and expiring. You didn't have to give any draft capital. It's worth to take the risk. And if he doesn't pan out, then who knows? But I don't necessarily know if his kind of flight to path of being a star is as great on Atlanta as maybe some other teams. So maybe he does eventually go to another squad. And then for the Warriors, I mean, a reunion of the old Celtics bigs, am I right? Horford and Kristaps over in the Bay playing with Curry, but they've been interested in Kristaps for a while. I also saw a tweet that said that Kristaps is apparently supposed to be back, and that's why the Warriors did trade for him. So they do feel some sort of confidence that he'll be able to play this season. So we'll have to see if that's, 10 minutes in 3 games, or if that's, 20 minutes a night for 10 or 15 games. But if he can get back to some sort of form, even if it's not 100% form for this Warriors team, I do like the addition of him because he does bring that size. I do think him and Draymond Green work pretty well together in the front court. He can be some sort of rim protector as well. And the shooting and spacing alongside Stephen Curry is just going to be great. He can work well in the pick and roll with him, I think, which would be nice, being a good screener. So as long as Kristaps can be like 65 to 70%, I think this is good for the Warriors because next year he's not going to be making $30 million either. You can get him on like a $10-15 million deal and have a good quality starting center or maybe backup center depending on Quentin Poston's development for that team. But I do think for the Warriors that they should have taken the Malik Monk and first round pick for Jonathan Kuminga in the offseason instead of taking this deal because they'd really just put themselves in a corner by holding out so long. And it's just kind of sad to see that the Warriors, even if I'm not a Warriors fan and I'm not the biggest Warriors supporter, it is sad to see them go from these great years with Curry, Draymond, and Clay and having this, second revisionist that we all thought with these kind of draft picks and the possibility of them trading or not. And honestly, now looking down the line in hindsight, it was the worst decision to not make those moves because those guys never really stuck or really panned out with this team besides Moses Moody.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, kind of just a weird trade, I guess. Guess yeah, starting with the Hawks, why not? Like Porzingis has no future there, especially like yeah, it was like a piece in the Trae Young era, and he hasn't been able to stay on the court, unfortunately. So it's like, yeah, why not? Let's see what Kuminga's got there. I don't. This Hawks team. We're gonna talk about the Bulls in a second, who's attempted to be the first team ever with only guards on the roster. The Hawks are kind of doing the opposite, where it's only wins on the roster. But I kind of think that makes a little bit more sense in the modern NBA because they just have a ton of size. They do have like a couple like traditional like big men and guards, I guess, but it's just like a whole bunch of wins and a lot of athleticism, speed. I kind of like it. Quinn Snyder's always been a coach that I just like. I think he's a good coach. I don't think like he gets enough credit for it. I don't know. I think he just runs some fun stuff there, and I feel like Kuminga could maybe fit into that. I'm more so just happy that he's like not on the Warriors because I thought there was like honestly I was leading towards him staying despite like all the buzz, and it was clearly a fractured relationship. It's like if they don't pull off a Giannis trade, damn it, I didn't mean to use the G word. I swore I wasn't gonna. Okay. But yeah, if they didn't pull off the Giannis trade, I thought he was gonna kind of like stay there. And it obviously didn't happen. And he moved, so I thought it was good. And I'm happy that he has a change of scenery finally because it was clear that he had no future in Golden State. For the Warriors of it all, I don't know. Like I hypothetically just love Porzingis' fit in this system. I think he's like the perfect big man for them. At the same time, like obviously the health concerns are like significant, especially with this like Pod's illness, and who knows? I mean, yeah, you hope that he's coming back soon. And on the bright side, when he's been healthy this season, he's looked really, really good. And like he's had some absurd on-off numbers. They have a good record with him. He's putting up just great counting stats in general too. So it's like maybe there's like a sliver of a chance that like this actually kind of works out well for the Warriors, but. Yeah, ultimately they held on to Kuminga for way too long. Bill Simmons had just like the perfect analogy that was also just like super wild. I think he said something. Yeah, I can't do it like Bill, but he said something along the lines of it's like you go to a funeral for someone who's been incoherent for 10 years, and you're like, wow, how did we get here? And I just thought that was like the funniest thing in the world, and that's kind of an accurate, way to sum up this like Kuminga era.
100%. I feel like I would have been bashing my head through a wall if I had to go through another offseason of Kuminga and the G word trade rumors and alerts on my phone for an entire offseason. So I am just glad that he was freed from his shackles from the Steve Kerr rotation and now is going to potentially fly free in the Quinn Snyder rotation.
Most definitely. I think he'll at least not get a DMP every night, which is an improvement. That's good. I think we can move on to, let's start with the Bulls Celtics trade and talk about it from the Celtics perspective because we're all Celtics fans, and then we can dive into a little bit of like the flurries of moves they made after that, and then talk about just the weird deadline that the Bulls had. So yeah, Vucevic going to Boston for Simons, and then there was like a second round picks on each side. The Bulls are ending up getting like a slightly better second round pick, whatever. But yeah, what did you guys make of this swap? And Vucevic is fit in Boston.
So when the trade first happened, I remember messaging you guys and being like, basically, I don't like this trade. And I had a reason for that. It wasn't just that I didn't like Vucevic or that I really liked Simons. I just felt like, for me, I mean, I've talked about this so many times, but I'm a big believer in Nemish Queta. And I just kind of felt like if we're trading for Vucevic, like that experiment's done. And I didn't want it to be done. It's looking more and more like it's not going to be. I actually saw that Vucevic is coming off the bench tonight, which is exciting because I think if he's going to have that type of success in Boston, it's going to be, at least for now, as he gets acclimated and everything, it's going to be him coming off the bench. It's so weird because I feel like objectively this trade makes a ton of sense for Boston because once Jason Tatum comes back, whether it's this year or next year, Simons and Pritchard sharing minutes in the second unit, I just don't think would have been really good. And who knows what Simons' next contract is going to look like because the way he was playing, he was going to get a payday. So I get why they traded him. I've warmed up a lot to the idea of Vucevic, especially in a bench role and especially if they can re-sign him to a cheap contract in the summer. I don't love it, but I understand it. And I, at the very, very, very least, am excited about what Vucevic can bring because he can still rebound, he can still shoot. He's basically a better version of Luka Garza. And I know I've actually seen a lot of people say they don't like getting Vucevic because of how well Garza's playing. But the way I look at it is we're seeing Garza at his best. I don't think he has any more than this. I think this could be a regular Vucevic night. You know, like 16 points off the bench, grab 10 rebounds or whatever it is. He can't do anything defensively, but neither could Garza. If there's one team that is really going to benefit from having Vucevic, it's the Celtics. They know how to hide his defensive inefficiencies. No, they're going to hide his bad defense. And then they also are the slowest team in the league, which is going to be good for Vucevic. Like, I don't know. I like it. I think I just need to see Vucevic in Boston first. And then from Chicago's perspective, I mean, I guess I get it. They've been talking about trading Vucevic forever. And, I mean, there were talks of it last offseason and then the offseason before and basically every trade deadline since Lonzo got injured, essentially. So the fact that it happened now when it happened for Simons, I think is a little weird. I mean, obviously they ended up trading Ayo Dosunmu, so I don't know if that's kind of what, and Kobe White, obviously. And so I don't know if they knew that was going to happen. And I don't know. I get it more from Boston's perspective than I do from Chicago's, but maybe they're hoping that they can get the most out of Simons and keep him around for the long haul, I guess.
Yeah, the Bulls wanted, I believe, a first-round pick last year at the deadline for Vucevic, and the offer they received was Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, and 2 seconds. Well, they essentially got a late first from the Celtics because that pick from the Pelicans is probably going to be, 31st or 32nd. So maybe not a first round pick, but just right outside for there. But I like the Vuce addition for the Boston Celtics. Like you mentioned, Elie, I thought he would be coming in as the backup big, so I was a little bit more reluctant to it. And I think that that's clearly what's going to be shown as we heard from the interviews today. He's going to be coming off the bench. So I really do like that for the Celtics. And I think for Vucevic now, especially with him being 35, this is his best role. Like he looks good as a starting center on bad teams, like with the Bulls and stuff like that. Like he can get you 10 and 10, but like what really is that going to do for him in the playoffs? Like, I feel like him starting wouldn't be the best. So getting him off the bench and even having him as like a mentor for Luka Garza, which I've talked about to some other people, I think will be very, very good, especially for Luka to learn just a little bit more on the offensive end and to be a little bit better. And like you mentioned, they're going to hide his defensive issues. They're going to limit him in minutes and still give Namish Keita that kind of reign there for the Boston Celtics. But I think the main takeaway from this trade, which I don't know if you guys saw, was that the Celtics actually took this Vucevic contract in on the Kristaps Porzingis TPE that they created in the offseason, allowing them to create another TPE in this year for the Anthony Simons deal, which alludes to me that maybe Vucevic is a potential plan for the future for this team, but is mainly just a trial run for this team, especially with this year, being a year that they want to compete, but with Jason Tatum's uncertainty if he's going to come back, and even if he does come back, is he going to be 100%? I still think puts them in like the testing grounds this season to see what really sticks and who can really be a part of this long-term team. And if Vucevic does hit that and they can find a comfortable contract to re-sign him to like a $10 to $15 million contract, I really like that. But if not, then they still have that $27 million TPE plus the first round picks that they were going to include to trade for a Zubac that they didn't get this offseason to go and get another big. And there's plenty of those guys that can fit into that. I know Jared Allen, who was on the trade block, who could be on the trade block next offseason, could be one of those guys. I know Nicholas Claxton as well from the Nets maybe could be one of those guys that could fit into that TPE. So there still are some options for the Celtics to still go out there and get that, maybe starting caliber center if they still need that upgrade with having Namish Keita if the Vucevic experiment doesn't work. But if it does all work out and they get him on a comfortable contract, then they still have that TPE as well to use in the future. And then for the Bulls, Anthony Simons played last night, looked really, really solid for them. I think he, like Elie said, was going to be a little bit more than Vucevic with his contract. So the Celtics not only wanted to save money, but didn't want to have those tough conversations in the offseason with the fans either losing him or overpaying him or something like that. So I do think this was kind of the smart move. I think when Simons was brought into Boston, it was always kind of foregone that he was going to be gone, so it made sense that they moved off him on the deadline. But for Simons, I think he'll have a nice little year in Chicago and then hopefully be able to work himself to a pretty relative contract. Maybe not $25 million, but $15 to $20 million range where he could be competing on a good team.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely kind of like you guys said, like at first I wasn't a big fan of it, but as time has gone on, a few days, and we haven't even seen him play yet, but I'm kind of like, I see the vision a little bit more, warming up to the idea. I mean, ultimately, I think I would have just rather prioritized defense. Personally, I'm a big fan of these defensive-minded big men, guys that are like rim runners, and then can provide some rebound and rim protection. Even if it wasn't like a Zubac, who would have been clearly more expensive. Even if it was more like a Daniel Gafford or Nick Claxton, maybe he would be in that Zubac price range. But those are guys I always advocated for. Or even if it's like a Day'Ron Sharp, who would have been inherently cheaper, I would have just preferred to prioritize defense. With that being said, I do like Vucevic's offensive fit with this team, and the 5-out spacing is huge. So it's nice to have a little bit of both. You get the spacing with Vucevic, and then you get the rim running stuff with Keita. I think both of those are really valuable. So ultimately I'm fine with it. And what it comes down to is I trust Brad Stevens. So I think it will work. And I do agree it's kind of a trial run. Let's see what happens. He has an expiring contract. So yeah, who knows if he gets brought back? Who knows how it will work? I do still have some significant concerns about him holding up in a playoff setting defensively. However, this team realistically isn't going to win a championship this year, so I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world to make a move like this. I think it's fine for the Celtics. And then all their other moves was kind of salary dump, clear some money. That's fine, whatever. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts, getting rid of Josh Minot, Boucher, and Tillman. I was yeah, whatever, clear some money, open up some two-way spots. I like Amari Williams. He's a lot of fun. That's cool. Maybe Ron Harper Jr. gets converted as well, but ultimately, Celtics deadline, I think it was solid. I'd give it, if I was doing a grade, a B. I'm fine with it, but definitely, not in love with it.
Yeah, I know a lot of fans weren't happy because obviously it was just tax-saving moves, and they're we shouldn't be celebrating the billionaires saving money, but this is going to help out a lot for the Celtics in the future because with ducking the repeater tax this year and ducking it next year, it allows them to unfreeze picks in the future and have more flexibility to go all in on their team like they did when they got Kristaps Porzingis and they got Jrue Holiday. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are only 27 and 29. They're not, anywhere at the end of their prime. So clearly the Celtics kind of taking a little bit of a step back maybe for this season and next year, but then going and putting all the chips in for the next, 3 to 5 seasons to kind of go in all in on their last pushes with this team, I think is kind of the smart decision. I am upset that Minot did leave because I did like Josh Minot, but I think the Nets will give him a little bit of a fun help. And I'm keeping an eye on Xavier Tillman potentially being waived by the Hornets just because he's a Michigan State Spartan, and Matt Ishbia loves those Michigan State guys. So always keeping an eye on Xavier Tillman as a potential Suns pickup.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, none of the other trades really did anything for me. I'm a little bit upset we traded Boucher just because I spoke so highly of him before the season started. Obviously, knowing what we know now, he was never going to get a run with us. Um, for that reason, I'm a little bit upset, but obviously it was the right call. And then Josh Minot was surprising, but not surprising. Like, it kind of came out of nowhere, and he's been out of the rotation for a long time, even before he got injured and after he came back. Uh, but it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I don't know. I felt like maybe we could have kept him for depth, but obviously it's mostly for financial reasons. And I mean, I don't know. He had a great start to the season. Hopefully that can lead to something with Brooklyn or wherever he ends up going. And then Xavier Tillman, I mean, obviously I don't really care that we don't have Xavier Tillman anymore, but I don't know. That's still somebody from the championship team. And I think for that reason, I mean, I'm always gonna support him and follow him for the rest of his career. Objectively, this was the 100% right call, and he's a free agent after this season, I'm pretty sure. So we at least got rid of him before he could just leave for nothing. But um, it's still a little sad to see him go. He helped us win a championship, which I'll always appreciate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it is the right call, and Bruce perfectly outlined like all the cap saving reasons. But I mean, like you said, Elie, I feel like I'm all oddly like attached to some of these guys, even if they didn't have like big roles by any means. I always liked Chris Boucher. Tillman was part of the title team, and Minot's a guy that I think he has a role in this NBA. I do. We saw it in November, especially. I mean, I'll never forget that stretch for him, and I think Brooklyn could be a nice spot for him to get a real opportunity. I'm kind of excited for him. But yeah, I mean, like with Tatum potentially returning, I feel like there's like no role. He was already out of the rotation, so like ultimately, I think like those tax saving moves were the right call. Were they like super flashy? Obviously not. But I don't mind it at all. The long term benefits, and I love that Mario Williams got his contract converted. I guess I'll talk about the Simons piece for the Bulls because I kind of glossed over that, and then we can talk about all the other weird moves the Bulls did. Because I'll say this right up front, like I don't think the Bulls made a single bad trade, but the conglomerate of all the trades they made together make no sense. So like if these moves just as like a standalone move, like getting Simons back for Vucevic and getting a better pick, that's an awesome move. Hell yeah, you do that. But then you just trade for a bunch of other guards. It's like you do realize that like forwards and centers are a real thing. I wonder if this is kind of like a tanking strategy. But at the same time, I don't know like how bad it's gonna make them in the East because the East is just so terrible. I was also kind of wondering about this. Like we talked about Kuminga before. Like why not like a Vucevic Kuminga kind of thing? I think that might have made a little bit more sense for both teams, quite frankly. But yeah, whatever. Charge that one to the game. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Simon's on this team. It's fine. I like him as a player. I think he could have a really important role down the line with some teams. It's just like the guard room is so cluttered. I guess we can go through the three other trades that they made, and their guard room was already too cluttered in my opinion. So the first big one would be Sexton and White, a swap there. Mike Conley was involved in it as well, but he was later waived and gets to go back to Minnesota to the delight of Chris Finch. But as for the Bulls side of things, they get Sexton along with 3 second-round picks for Kobe White. I think that was like solid value personally. And then Jaden Ivey they got for Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric. That was the original Conley move, and the Pistons get back a first-round pick swap from the Wolves in that one. And then the last one is Audisumu and Julian Phillips for 4 second-round picks, Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller. Do any of those moves sort of jump out to you, or do you guys just have like general thoughts on the Bulls trying to be the first team ever to form a team of all guards?
Yeah, they're a very, very weird team. I think the one thing that stands out to me, just because I like Rob Dillingham, is that he's going to get another opportunity, maybe in Chicago. I don't even know, just because of how many guards they have there. But I think that'll be something interesting. Jaden Ivey also, I think, is a nice little buy low candidate, especially with him having a down season. I think he can be really good. I don't necessarily know how well of a fit he works alongside Josh Giddey and Matt Ellis, but I do think he could be someone as interesting value, or maybe someone to really rebuild that value. And for the Bulls here, I mean, we've talked about it before, but they've sold way too late. This should have been done last offseason or the offseason previous, but it just never really happened. And they could have actually gotten good value for Kobe White, could have gotten actual good value for Nikola Vucevic, but ultimately kind of just swing out and just luck with just a random luck of the draw of just expiring money. And I think that's what the Bulls are trying to do, is just like you mentioned, be bad. I think that the Hornets will pass them with this little bit of a run here that they've had of these last couple of weeks. They'll make it into the play-in. The Bulls will fall out. The Bulls will they'll be in the lottery, but not in the top four of the the bottom four of the lottery. They'll be in the top 10 of the lottery, which will actually be interesting for once to watch as a Bulls fan and as a fan of the NBA and someone that wants to see the Bulls tank. And who knows? Maybe the Bulls have some magic like the Hawks and the Mavericks and jump up and get a top player and make some noise, or who knows? Maybe the Bulls continue to still be mid, throw a contract at Walker Kessler, try to re-sign him and do some things. But they did get one center, and they got Nick Richards. So shout out to them for bringing in Nick Richards over from Phoenix. He's playing some third-string center, fourth-string center for the Suns. He's now going to be playing some potential starting center minutes with the Bulls because they only have Yabu, Sticks, and Jalen Smith and Nick Richards as big men, and then have an abundance of guards.
Yeah, I think Bruce honestly just kind of perfectly encapsulated their deadline. It just felt like this was them admitting, hey, we probably should have traded Vucevic a long time ago. We probably should have traded Kobe White a long time ago. We probably should have traded Ayo Dosunmu a long time ago. And this is just them kind of, I think, eating their losses. And I mean, all things considered, I guess it's fine. They got stuff back in return, and I mean, to be fair, I actually kind of like Nick Richards. Funny enough, I mean, I don't think he's gonna be great, but I did write about him as a potential fit for the Pacers a month or two ago. So I think if any team needed a guy like Nick Richards, it's Chicago. So all things considered, I mean, yeah, it's very confusing, and I think this was them just maybe taking a little bit too long to make these deals happen. But it is what it is. I'm excited to see, I guess, where they go from here, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think like any of these like individual moves like kind of stands out. Like I said, it's just like such a weird roster. Cool for Jaden Ivey to get a change of scenery. I was kind of pitching that idea before, but I was hoping that they would like trade out like more of their guards, so they could give him like a full runway. But I want to see what he can do with a bigger role because it just clearly wasn't working out in Detroit, despite showing clear flashes of upside in years previous. The Kobe White Sexton trade, I guess that kind of stands out to me because it's like I don't get Sexton's value around the league. Like I personally think him and White are very similar players, except Sexton's like a far better defender. So I'd rather have him on my team. I would have thought his value would have been a bit higher, but I guess like White's a better scorer and he has more size. I don't know. I was surprised by. I guess I wasn't that surprised by it because we saw the Sexton for Nurkic swap, which was a big surprise in the offseason. But I just continue to be surprised, I guess, by like Sexton's lack of value. But I guess like expiring contract, you get a few second round picks. Like what the heck? I mean, uh, you're just gonna run a team of all guards. Okay, cool. It's just kind of fun because Trey Jones was another guy like I really wanted the Timberwolves to trade for. I'm super happy with Io. But I was like surprised, like after all those moves, you still keep Trey Jones. Obviously, you keep Giddey. But yeah, just a weird deadline. I guess I can quickly mention like the Wolves trade that happened because they were involved. In that one, obviously, I love it for the Wolves. I love Io's fit. I'm super excited. He's not like a true like lead guard, but a nice like combo guard who can provide some much needed ball handling and playmaking relief. And then he just does a little bit of everything. He's a really fun player, knockdown shooter, high level defender as well. So I love that move for the Wolves. For the Bulls, yeah, like you guys said, it's kind of admitting your mistakes. 4 second round picks for an expiring contract isn't terrible, especially although he is having a good season. And then Dillingham and Miller like fun upside swings. As like a Dillingham guy, like Bruce is, I wish he went to a place that had like a bit more runway for minutes because I could totally see him continuing to get DNPs at least for this year, or maybe not. Maybe they just fully tank and they make up some injuries, and then he finally gets a chance to like play real minutes. Um, but yeah, I guess long term, I am excited to see if he can potentially like prove himself as a rotation worthy player, which I think he could. He just kind of had a tough go at things in Minnesota, and it was just a tough situation for him overall. I didn't show much. I'm not gonna act like whoa, like he showed a little bit of flashes this year because quite frankly he really didn't, and he struggled a lot. But I think it was just a tough situation with his minutes fluctuating and just being on a competitive team as a small guard. Um, but yeah, I think we can move on from talking about the Bulls. And God, they should be thankful that the Sacramento Kings and New Orleans Pelicans exist. I'll leave it at that. We did sort of briefly mention the Nick Richards part. I think it's worth bringing up, especially because Bruce is the Suns guy. What did you make of moving off of Nick Richards and then bringing in Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey? And then I guess, like, if you want, we can talk about Milwaukee getting Usman Dane and Nigel Hayes Davis. But I don't think that's like super relevant.
Definitely not. I appreciate you letting me get some love for the Suns here, even if their trade was just a salary ducking move. But that's basically what the Suns did this offseason. Obviously, they didn't really want to ruffle any feathers or kind of do anything to their roster because guys like Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen have really stepped up for this team in big moments when guys like Devin Booker or Jalen Green have been out. And they have a big kind of offseason this year with Colin Gillespie being a free agent, having the impending restricted free agency with Mark Williams, and even looking at a guy in Jordan Goodwin, who has been a very standout defender for this team too. So I do think making this move to duck the luxury tax, specifically when you're paying $25 million to Bradley Beal every year, is a pretty good thing for this team to be doing. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Richards just didn't play. He was behind Oso Gadaro and Mark Williams, and even at some points Kevin Malawach. So I think it was a smart move for them to do that. They bring in Amir Coffey and Cole Anthony. I don't necessarily know if either of them are going to stay long term. It has been reported that they do kind of like Amir Coffey, so maybe he could be like a 10th, 11th man for this team as kind of that like Royce O'Neal light kind of wing if he gets injured or if they need some more depth. But I wouldn't expect Cole Anthony to stay long term. They do have 2 roster spots now open, so two-way standout Jamari Bouye is expected to potentially get a conversion this season. We'll have to wait and see when that does happen, but he's been very deserving of that with his ability to create on the ball and also be a pretty relentless defender for this team. And then they've also had another standout in Isaiah Livers, who's been playing on a 2-way contract this year. So maybe if Amir Coffey doesn't really work out, they convert Isaiah Livers towards the end of the season. That could be something that could be discussed as well. But for the Suns, they duck the luxury tax. And I mean, hey, the Bucks are taking a flyer on Ousmane Dieng, who got rerouted, 4 times this trade deadline, which is absolutely hilarious. I was talking about it with my brother. Him and Georges Niang, even Georges Niang last season and this offseason got rerouted like 3 or 4 times. And Ousmane Dieng's following in his footsteps doing the same thing. We'll have to wait and see who the next big name of that in the next trade deadline is. Maybe it's Rob Dillingham next year. Who knows? But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Elie, any take on this?
Honestly, not really. I mean, it was fine.
Dude,
I
Nick
mean,
Richards
yeah.
is so valuable, man. He's
I
so
think
great.
he's fine. I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens with Cole Anthony, I guess. I don't know, like, because who knows? But yeah, I don't think this is much of a needle mover in any direction, to be honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, with all due respect, I just wanted to give Bruce a chance to talk
Yeah,
about his sons. And yeah, I mean, I kind of sneaky like Cole Anthony and Amir Coffey. Like, I don't know if they're actually going to do anything in Phoenix, but Cole Anthony's been a guy I've always liked throughout his career. Because he's a North Carolina Tar Heel. No other reason. Cool microwave scorer, I guess. But maybe he could get a bigger role here. I feel like Phoenix kind of needs like another like traditional point guard, so maybe that could be interesting. And then like Coffee, like the hypothetical like 3-and-D win, like it could be interesting. And I think under Jordan Ott, who's a far better coach than Doc Rivers, maybe there could be something there. So yeah, I don't mind this move for the Suns at all. We only have 2 other minor trades, unless you guys want to give out like a shout out to like a move around the league you guys liked. But I guess we could start with Jared McCain getting moved to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for a first round pick and 3 second round picks. The first round pick is via the Rockets this year, so not going to be super valuable. Um, Before I let you guys give your thoughts on this, I do want to say that Daryl Morey had his press conference today, and he said that he feels very comfortable that the Sixers are selling high on Jared McCain.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
wild take.
yeah, I don't see that at all.
Yeah,
So,
I get it. Maybe the fit with, VJ and Maxi and having him being the third best player in a team that's kind of guard heavy isn't really the best, but I would have tested the waters with McCain a little bit more. Obviously, this is a huge win for the Thunder. Next year, they are going to be, I believe, like $30 million over the second apron. So they're going to have guys like Lou Dort and Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe to potentially look at to move. And taking a guy in Jared McCain, who can kind of replicate some of that three-point shooting and scoring for this team, while also being on a rookie scale deal, is just smart moves by Sam Presti. Just kind of just finding some other budget guys and bringing them in to keep prolonging this Thunder dynasty that they're looking obviously to kind of build here. I think obviously it was a great move for them. They obviously moved off Ousmane Dieng to do this, so they got Jared McCain and then got the lovely beholden Mason Plumlee from the Charlotte Hornets, who they ended up waiving, which was absolutely hilarious. Former Phoenix Suns, shout out to Mason Plumlee. But yeah, obviously a big move for the Thunder here, and then for the Sixers, a bad one in my opinion. Even though if he doesn't really fit, I still think they could have gotten a little bit more value for McCain to kind of see what he could truly be for this team. And the Sixers always try to duck the tax and always say these moves, but the Paul George suspension gave them more freedom to duck the tax, and they didn't have to essentially move Eric Gordon yesterday to duck the tax either. So Daryl Morey is just making random moves to make random moves, and I know a lot of Sixers fans are not really happy with that because they could already converted Don Barlow and Jabari Walker with the Paul George stuff. So yeah, I think it's ultimately a lose for the Sixers, but as a Celtics fan, it's a win for me because I love to see the Sixers lose.
yeah, maybe I mean I know Jared McCain wasn't playing well this season, and I know he actually had some time in the G League, but this just kind of feels like a really weird trade. Like the I don't know why they couldn't have just waited an extra year to see if he could figure things out and then trade him. I don't know. I just felt like everything about this was kind of weird. And then go figure, of all the teams to trade for him, it's OKC. I think this is a really good move for OKC, even if they gave up a lot of picks. I still think pretty highly of McCain's potential, and I'm excited, I guess, to see what he can do in OKC. I just hope for the 76ers' sake that it doesn't come back to bite them later on.
Yeah, for sure. Think you guys hit on it there. I don't like this move at all for the Sixers. I get like he's not having a great year or whatever, but I still think McCain has a ton of upside. I mean, he averaged 15 points a game in his rookie season that was unfortunately cut short due to injury. And yeah, of course, it's the Thunder who make this move. I don't think they're selling high at all. Oh, 4 second round picks. Ooh, woo. And then you get a late first round pick. I think that's just a ridiculous comment. Obviously, he's not going to say, yeah, we made a dumb trade. But I think they kind of made a dumb trade. If I was looking to like maybe you want to make a financial move, ownership has a role, whatever. And you kind of think this like backcourt with Edgecombe and Maxi and Grimes and McCain is a little weird. I would have just personally traded Quinn and Grimes. I don't think he has much of a future there. So that's what I would have done. But hey, guess what? I'm not Daryl Morey. Um, I think we can move on to our last trade
You're
here.
not getting cursed out by James Harden in China.
Dude, I wish I was. James Harden would hate me. I've slandered him for years because I mean, he's so overrated. um, I also don't think that's like that original of a take. I feel like a lot of people don't like James Harden. But I'm one of the many, I guess. I think we can move ahead to our last trade here, and that's the Knicks getting Jose Alvarado, for Dalen Terry and 2 second round picks. I guess it's worth noting that they got Dalen Terry from the Bulls because they traded Gershon Yabusele. Whatever. I believe this was the only move the Pelicans made all deadline. And then also I think it's worth noting that Miles McBride is potentially out for the rest of the season. That came out like right after they made this trade, so I think that explains the logic, despite the Knicks like kind of having a solid backcourt. But yeah, what did you guys make of this move?
All right, first off, Pelicans, what are we doing? Another ranch. What are we doing here? Like you mentioned, just like the Kings, you have Trey Murphy, you have Herb Jones. What are we doing? Why are we holding them hostage on a team that has 15 wins? We sold our first round pick thinking we were going to be a playoff team. We're not a playoff team. We still think we can be a playoff team. We're not going to be a playoff team. We still think next year we could be a playoff team. Well, guess what? You're not going to be a playoff team. You still have Jordan Poole's money. You still have DeJounte Murray's money. Look to move off those contracts. Look, try to trade Herb Jones or Trey Murphy for some value, at least something. But I don't know what they're doing. At least they move off Jose Alvarado and actually give him to a team where he can provide some value. But Jose Alvarado's on like a scam contract. He's making like $4.5 million next year on a player option. Like that is just free money for the Knicks to just pick up and just keep on to fill over this experiment. Like you mentioned, Deuce McBride's going to be out for them for the season, so this is a great addition, not only just to fill in that role, but just more backcourt help because the Jordan Clarkson failed experiment. And Tyler Kolek has been really solid, but I feel like has some of those defensive efficiencies where when you get in the playoffs, it's not going to be great. But Jose Alvarado is not only from New York, but exactly a New York Knicks type of player. He's going to dive for the loose balls. He's going to be pumping up the crowd. I've seen a lot of people compare him to this player, and it very is similar. He's like Josh Hart, basically, at the guard position. So, like, he's just going to continue to re-embody that. He's already good friends with Josh Hart. That was, like, the whole connection on how he kind of got to New York and how the rumblings kind of started of them being interested in him. So, yeah, I really like this move. And for the Knicks to not have to give up second-round picks to get off Gershon, to get Dalen Terry, and then still use second-round picks, but not to give up so much draft capital to get off Dalen Terry was kind of cool. When they made this move, I was like, oh, they're easily going to do this for Jose Alvarado. They're not keeping Dalen Terry, and they did that. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, for the Knicks, a big win here on the margins, a contract that they're going to be able to keep next offseason when they look to re-sign Mitch Robinson and all these other players to keep this championship core alive. And who knows, maybe he's a big piece to woo over Giannis Antetokounmpo in the offseason to come over to New York.
I guess you never know. I actually really like Jose Alvarado though, and I think the Knicks are going to love him. He's gonna obviously he's from there, but just the way he plays, the energy he brings, and how pesky he is, he's gonna be a huge fan favorite in New York. I like this a lot. Obviously, Alvarado was. I mean, he had kind of been picking it back up a little bit, but he was his role was kind of being diminished because of Jeremiah Fears going off and having a really good rookie season. So it makes sense for Jose Alvarado to trade him for the Pelicans to trade Jose Alvarado. And I wonder if he had any say in where he was going because I mean he had been there for a few years, was a fan favorite, like I said. I'm sure he was a good guy to have in the locker room and everything like that. And I mean the Knicks absolutely needed him, but I feel like he could have gone to basically any team on being on that cheap of a contract. I think he's only getting paid $4.5 million a year, and he has a player option for next season. I just wonder if he had any say in where he was going, but I think this is a good move for the Knicks. And then from the Pelicans' perspective, I mean, I understand why they traded him. I think he's going to be really good in New York, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you guys for sure. I mean, like you said, Elie, you could just totally see it. Like he's immediately going to be a fan favorite, just a classic Knicks guy. Love this move. I thought Alvarado was like an underrated like trade candidate. He was a guy I talked a lot about for the Timberwolves. Wasn't necessarily like the top of my list, but it's like if they're trying to just make a buy low move around the margins, like perfect fit. And for the Knicks, yeah, it's an awesome move, especially with that unfortunate news about McBride. So yeah, no complaints for the Knicks other than like, damn it, as a Celtics fan. Probably moves them a little closer to like top of the East. Nice move around the margin. I just like when teams like do that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And then Pelicans, yeah, Bruce, you summed it up nicely, but what another stupid organization, man. Oh man, I would be annoyed if I was a Pelicans fan. And I kind of get it. It's like if you don't want to move off like Herb Jones or Trey Murphy, fine, whatever. Even if you could get like amazing value for them and set yourself up nicely for a rebuilding team, but that's besides the point. But the reports were they think they're a playoff team still. What? I mean, this is like next level delusional shit. I don't get it at all. Zion's the guy. It's like, how is he still on the roster? I can't believe it. I mean, I can. I didn't expect him to get traded at the deadline, but it's like at the same time, it's like, how is this guy still a Pelican? That's a little bit mind blowing. I kind of feel like he might have had some decent value because he's been healthy for a stretch. It's like whenever Zion has like a 10-15 game stretch when he's healthy and playing good, I'm like, I would just trade him because I know where this is going. I hate to say it, but you kind of know where it's going. And then, I mean, Jordan Poole's the other one where it's like, how did they just not move off of Jordan Poole, who was legitimately getting DNPs? I thought he was a lock to get traded, I'm not going to lie. I didn't even think they would get like much for him or there would be like any real market. But it was like, yeah, just trade him. I kind of pitched the idea of like something centered around a Jordan Poole-Levine swap and the two worst organizations in the league might have both benefited from it a little bit because Poole's a cheaper contract. He's not playing there. And then Levine, it's like, hey, Pelicans, you could maybe make the playoffs, right? So I don't know. Yeah, just I feel like it's worth noting that this organization is just completely incompetent, just like we did with the Kings. But yeah, any closing thoughts about the deadline? Do you guys have any like underrated moves you like to shout out? I think we covered like most of it. But yeah,
I'm gonna give a shout out. It wasn't a move on the deadline, but it happened this morning. Shout out to the Orlando Magic for picking up Javon Carter and Roundball Renaissance because I know he's very ecstatic that that happened. A little bit of a weird pickup because they got rid of Tyus Jones and they're adding him. So, like, is this going to still compete with Jace Richardson? Like, are we still going to have a Jace Richardson battle for the backup point guard? It does look like that. But I think Javon Carter can be a lot better than Tyus Jones for this team and kind of replicate the role that they wanted for Tyus Jones to fill in. So I really liked that on the margins. And then I can't forget to mention that Mike Conley, once again, I know you mentioned it earlier, is back with Chris Finch and the Wolves. So I even though it's going to pain the Wolves fans, it's going to pain you to write about it, it's going to pain you to watch Mike Conley playing 30 minutes in crunch time and late game scenarios. It's great finesse for the Bulls there in the front office to get off the contract, give up a first pick swap, get underload the apron, rebring him back, and still find a way to get AO so that you can reaggregate salaries and set themselves up for if it's still a Giannis sweepstakes or whatever other moves they want to do in the offseason. I like that they were able to drop below the aprons. A lot of these front offices didn't want to pay the tax or wanted to drop these aprons, and a lot of teams did. And I believe there's only 3 teams right now that are in the apron. It is the Cavs, the Warriors, and the Knicks. So, like, it's clearly proving that even though the CBA stuff is happening and that there are these restrictions, teams are trying to find ways to get out of it. And even though we've only had it for a couple of years, I feel like the finalization of how to building these rosters in this new CBA is kind of coming into play, and we're kind of seeing how these trade deadlines are going to kind of work now. And I think it's got to be exciting. We geared up for a trade deadline a week ago with one trade with Trae Young, and over the span of like 4 days, we got like 25 more trades. So maybe that's what we're just kind of gearing up for more in store with future off seasons or deadlines.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a specific trade or anything like that I want to touch upon, but I feel like I'm a little bit surprised that we actually did get as much activity as we did. I mean, there were a lot of rumors, and obviously we didn't get any blockbuster trades, and John Moran is still in Memphis and all of that. And besides that, though, I feel like we had a lot more to look into and a lot more to discuss than I thought we would have at this point last week. So overall, I mean, I thought it was another pretty fun trade deadline, and I guess I'm looking forward to seeing what next year brings.
yeah, no, absolutely. I like both your points there. I mean, Bruce, like, yeah, Javon Carter's kind of a nice like depth piece for them. I think he's flat out a much better player than Tyus Jones. At the same time, hopefully Jace Richardson still gets some opportunities, and then financially savvy move for the Timberwolves. For the love of God, just have Mike Conley buy into a vet. Not even have Chris Finch buy into the idea that Mike Conley is just like a pure veteran leader because he's just not a rotational player anymore. But he's an awesome leader, so I get bringing him back, and the financial aspects are really cool. And it is interesting to see these teams like duck the aprons. 3 teams, as you mentioned, there. And I mean, you mentioned the 3 teams. There's a polar bear in Texas with one of them who decided not to duck the aprons. But yeah, I feel like these front offices are just being a little bit smarter in this apron era, and I think that's good to see with 3 exceptions around the league. And then, like you said, Ely, I was pleasantly surprised by the activity. I thought it was a lot of fun. I was kind of anticipating it to be like maybe a drier trade deadline and a lot of rumors about like teams not trying to make any moves because the G word situation. But I was happy to get a lot of activity and activity not just like on deadline day, like Tuesday and Wednesday were crazier than the deadline day. I heard that was because of like the Mark Williams situation last year, so teams wanted to get these physicals in line. But regardless, I enjoyed it a lot because I was kind of thinking like, oh, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's gonna be a big rumors day, whatever. And then boom, Jaren Jackson Jr. Oh my God. So I thought it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Can't say it topped last year's because last year's was just totally insane, but still one of the better deadlines in recent memory. So yeah, just looking forward to it last year, but also happy that, the moves have settled in and we can just purely focus on basketball from this point forward, both on the podcast and right in. I'm just excited to really just focus on the actual games being played. Cause rumor season, while it is a lot of fun, it's also like just a lot of stress, I would say, just a lot of like talking about not the actual basketball being played. So happy to move ahead in that regard. But yeah, I think we can close it out unless you guys have any closing thoughts. I just want to give you guys a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Awesome. So thank you again, Eamon, for having us on once again. You can find me over on Twitter at Bruce Veliz, where I tweet about the Suns and the NBA. I've just been getting back into Swish City over on YouTube as well, so going to be doing more videos over there. So check those out. We'll have a winners and losers video coming out either later today or tomorrow on there. And then, yeah, Bright Side of the Sun, where all my Suns work is going to be found, where I did an article on the trade yesterday, and we'll have some more words coming there over the next few weeks with basketball getting back into the swing of things. My final statement that I will say here before I do leave, actually two statements, is one, is that we better see John Morant, Domantas Sabonis, Michael Porter Jr., all these guys that were rumored to be traded this deadline, traded in the offseason, because I need to see it happen. And then secondly, Shams Charania needs more competition. That is all my final words.
Yeah, more of the same. But yeah, I appreciated being on again. And you can find my writing at 8points9seconds.com. I write about all things Indiana Pacers, but you can also reach out to me or find me on all social media platforms. My name should be around here somewhere if you want to just hit me up, talk sports, music, whatever. I'll be there.
All right, yeah. Thank you, boys, for hopping on the show again. We'll have to do it again soon. But yeah, until next time, peace out, guys.
Peace out. Thank you.
All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Cassels Cast. Once again, shout out to Bruce and Elie for hopping on the show. Make sure to go check out all of their work as well. Links will be in the description. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace out.